All right, you're still here with us on the Breakfast Show on Ghana Television, stretching the length and breadth of this country. We are into our legal segment of the show. This segment is a collaboration between Star Ghana and GBC with funding from UK Aid, US Aid, Danida, and the European Union. You can send us a text ahead so that we can quickly read it out on 023 2989 360 023 2989 360. Today, we'll be talking about international issues. The international front has been quite interesting from the attack at Westgate in Kenya, where we lost one of our own, Professor Awuno, may his soul rest in perfect peace, to the UN General Assembly, where finally the UN have come out with a resolution on the use of chemical weapons, and also to the red alert issued from the UK government to its citizens here in Ghana of a possible attack in Ghana, plus other related issues we'll be talking about during this segment of the legal briefing on the Breakfast Show on Ghana Television. My guest for us to have this detailed discussion, I have Salom Brandt here, who is a communication director in Mali, Ghana, a long friend who has run away from us, but finally we found him here. And we also have Abubakar Abdullah, who is a legal practitioner, and Ibad Ibrahim, who is an expert on the Middle East and political Islam. Gentlemen, good to have you.
Thank you.
And good morning.
Good morning.
Is it by coincidence that we all have this always thing?
I asked you that. I don't know whether it was through divine inspiration.
Okay.
But it's cool to be in the same color.
All right. Let's first start on the Kenya issue,
Yeah.
then we can link it to other things too. Your reflections on what happened in Kenya first.
Personally, as a Muslim, I feel mortified that some rogue elements would hijack a religion which is meant to be a peaceful one, a religion that is so pervasive and is shared by 1 out of every 4 people in the world, to carry out the atrocious acts of killing defenseless, innocent people who had gone out to take a bite at the restaurant or had gone out shopping. The attacks were reprehensible, and from where I stand, I condemn it in the harshest of words. Islam preaches peace and religious coexistence with other people. When you look at Quran chapter 5 verse 32, if you would permit me, Allah says, من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا. So did we decree unto the children of Israel and all the generations that would come after them, that the magnitude of the sin of someone who took away the soul of an innocent would be like exterminating the whole of humanity. And in the same vein, if you saved the life of a single person, the reward you would get would be commensurate, as though you had saved the whole of humanity. So Islam encourages the saving of lives. It doesn't encourage the arbitrary taking away of lives. So the carnage is condemnable, and those French people do not represent us as Muslims.
Salom, your reflection also on this issue.
It's
you were in Kenya 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I was in Kenya 2 weeks ago, and it's quite interesting because I was where at the side of Kenya that I was is very close to where the Westgate incident happened, and for me I think that it's like he has rightly said, it's something, the work of fringe elements. It is very, very abhorrent that something like that could have happened. Considering that Kenya is one of the major rising stars of Africa and sort of leading the African Renaissance in some form or the other. I mean, being in Kenya, you see the vibrancy of the whole nation. I mean, from Mombasa at the port right down to Nairobi in the center, you actually see a lot of economic activity, a lot of foreign people coming in and investing in an economy which has a tourism mainstay of about $1 billion a year. I mean, so a threat to such an industry like that is not only a threat to the livelihoods of Kenyans, but to the strength and relevance of Africa as a whole. And so it's quite important that Africans or the AU put this on top of their agenda to see to collaborate with Kenya to see how we can solve the threats of fringe elements like Al-Shabaab and their related collaborators, because they do not only affect the economic stability or the political stability of Kenya, but the whole political stability of East Africa, because Kenya is like a fulcrum. Kenya is like the economic gear that other countries like Uganda, the new South Sudan, Sudan itself, Rwanda, Burundi, etc., rely on for certain goods and services, usually because of their transport, access to the ports, etc. And also being that the whole Somali-Kenya region, all down to Tanzania, is going to become a new industrial haven in terms of oil and gas activity. It is very, very important that some of these things should be nipped in the bud to make sure that the stability of that side of the Indian Ocean ripples across the whole of East.
Right. We'll come back to talk about the AU and its response.
Yeah.
But let me also pick your thoughts on the happenings.
The activities are unacceptable. Muslims throughout the world have condemned it. So we should not, we need to educate people on the religious factors, because I believe that it is through religion that these activities are done. But the religion is not properly explained to people. Islam, as my colleague said, is a peaceful religion. So to fight and kill people in the name of Islam is unacceptable. And the attack also shows that terrorism is not meant for one country to fight. It is a global affair now.
Yeah.
You would realize that the victims were nationalities all over the world, from Latin America to South Asia. Every corner there is somebody. So we have to sit down and coordinate the activities of those who will be fighting terrorism in the world. And we need to link up with national governments, needs to link up and share intelligence so that we can combat this menace.
The national government you touched on will link me to the AU. Was the response, yes, some heads of state came out to condemn the act, but others also argued that this act they saw it coming because they did similar in Uganda, and they were trying to get to Kenya. But was the response enough from Kenya and also from the UN?
I think the final straw that broke the camel's back was Kenya's military involvement in the internal strife of Somalia. You see, when you look at the Horn of Africa, there are no visuals to show, but you would realize that Somalia is closer to Kenya than it is to Uganda. You have to move further to the west to get to Kenya. Then from Kenya you go to Uganda. I've studied these militant groups, but when you look at the pattern of attacks, in July 2010, Uganda was attacked whilst people were watching the final match of the World Cup.
Yeah.
So to pull off that attack in faraway Uganda could have been more difficult than pulling off an attack to their nearest neighbor, Kenya. So what precipitated the attack against Uganda? It was because of Uganda's involvement in the internal strife of Somalia. So Kenya was spared since 2010. It hadn't been attacked. And just as my senior colleague has mentioned, Al-Shabaab had shown some signs of hostility and belligerence towards Kenya. They attacked various regions. The border town of Garissa was attacked a couple of times. There were sporadic attacks in Mombasa and all that. So the overt reason Kenya gave for getting involved in Somalia was to protect its endangered frontiers from the activities of Al-Shabaab. But to protect your frontiers so that tourism, which is the main wheel upon which your economy grinds, you could have just thrown in a few security elements. You see, counterinsurgency should be intelligence-driven. They poured in up to 4,000 soldiers into Kismayo. So in the operation of Linda in Chi, they torpedoed the Al-Shabaab. So the Al-Shabaab were also...
Were they right doing that?
I think they were right because their territorial integrity was under threat. But to have strangulated Al-Shabaab economically, because charcoal business is a multi-million-dollar business that is done in Kismayo because of the port over there. So the Al-Shabaab felt like they had been cheated. They felt like they had to hit back at Kenya and hit back hard. We share in the fright and plight of people who are oppressed in any part of the world, but we don't share in the methodology of attacking soft spots, like a place like a shopping mall where people just go there to take a bite. And unfortunately, one of the illustrious sons of this country found himself there at the wrong time.
So Salam, would you agree to those who are calling on Kenya to withdraw their troops from?
No, I would say that would not be the best solution. Actually, you see, even before the KDF, that's the Kenyan Defense Forces,
got involved.
Yeah. You know, there was this. Is it AMISOM?
AMISOM.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's
the
AU-UN force.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very lackadaisical approach initially because it was wasteful. Okay. About 3,000. Since 2007, 7,000 forces.
Yeah.
And the AMISOM died in the streets of Mogadishu, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, and you should also realize that the legitimate Somali government was also operating from Nairobi at a certain point.
Exactly.
It is through the intervention of the KDF that they have been able to install themselves in Mogadishu and establish a power base from there. You see, Somalia has been a problem since 1992 after Ahmed Siad Barre. And Somalia was a very a thriving nation. It was, I mean, they are diverse culturally, historically. But if you look at it even from the treaties of 1880, when Africa was divided up by the colonial masters, you realize that the Somali front has always been disintegrated along French Somalia, British Somalia, Italian Somalia, then the Ethiopian Somalia. Before this, so you can see that historically they have faced an oppressed and divided front. The problem of Somalia is a problem for Africa. I think that.
But what has the union done about it?
So that's what I'm trying to say. That I think the AU has neglected the history of Somalia and its problems, and it has culminated in the kind of chaos that we see. If AU should engage all the people around that the Horn of Africa region, Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Kenya itself, and then Uganda. They would, because a lot of the Kenyans a lot of the Somalis since 1992 have been actually displaced into those who couldn't get to the US and the UK, etc. Were displaced into Nairobi, were displaced into Kampala, and were displaced some of them into Rwanda and Sudan, etc. So it's a problem that the AU sort of left hanging. And I think that apart from just sending a military force, which the first one was not very well done, that is the Asman, wasn't very well done. It was the Kenyan Defense Force that actually established a certain semblance of order. And of course, in doing that, they also angered Al-Shabaab into coming into desperate, because Al-Shabaab itself at the moment seems to have also been disintegrated along its power lines. So I think in a way to find relevance for itself, it has decided that Kenya was the main threat or the main cause of the division. And therefore, they are trying to attack that main cause of the division. However, what should happen now is that apart from just antagonizing Al-Shabaab, we are also talking about a large segment or a group that controls a large swath of the Somali nation as it stands. The best thing to do was to find a way to engage them. You see, when you engage people and give them a certain level of economic relevance, they do not resort to violence, because then they will resort to actually improving their lives.
But if these people are threats to the security of that nation too,
they are threats. But if you look at the threats, they pose a threat usually on economic levels when they engage in the piracy activity, when they do all these kidnappings, etc. I think that, I mean, in cases where even with Al-Qaeda in Pakistan and the rest, there are times when dialogue has worked to put some of these things. I think a total demilitarization of that area is not going to be done unless some form of dialogue is done. And that will mean the AU should be up and doing in finding people who can actually tackle the problems of the religion from both the historic and the economic.
Let me quickly pick your thoughts on this. Looking at the reasons given by Al-Shabaab for attacking Kenya, is it right, or was it right for the UK government to also issue the same alert? Because we also have our troops in Mali.
Yes, it is. Once you are participating somewhere to liberate the country for the legitimate leaders, they would take you as a target. They would say, what do you want in our backyard? Go back to your home. If they can strike in your country, they will do so. But the whole community must come out with a plan to fight these insurgents. If we are going to...
Talking about Ghana?
Well, the whole of
Africa.
Yes, West Africa. I'm even surprised that I know Ghanaian Muslims are very peaceful, but the influence of Boko Haram hasn't yet gotten here. But it is
which
not,
we hope and pray that it will never get.
But if we don't plan for it, it will surprise us. It will surprise us. So what we need to do, the regional bodies must organize seriously. And most of them have backings from legislation passed to protect the African continent. The ECOWAS, under their protocols, can defend one nation. I just noticed that there's even an African Defense Act passed in 1965, which Act 313 of 1965, which actually gives the president the authority to actually make some regulations when there is peace, when there is activities that threatens the security and peace of an African nation, to be able to move troops, move aircrafts, and even recruit volunteers to go and fight in that African nation. So I think we have the legal framework. We are just not using it. We are reluctant. So we have to put our houses in order and fight these people. If we leave them, the more we leave them, the more they expand. And we actually need to also educate the people, because a lot of political education is needed.
Yeah, I just want to add that Africa has been hit by extremism and has been hit hard. And in a justified quest for retribution, we should be measured. Let's go down to the root of the problem. Why did Al-Shabaab carry out what they did in Nairobi, which is so condemnable? One, Al-Shabaab sought to gain some three cheap political points. One, Uhuru Kenyatta is a beleaguered president. He faces a pending suit at the ICC. So by carrying out such an attack in his own backyard,
leaders have really totally disagreed with
exactly. By carrying out such an attack in his own backyard, they wanted to chip away at his credibility in the eyes of his own people. That you can't even protect us back home, then you go and deploy our troops in another country. Then secondly, they also wanted to send a strong signal to the international community that maybe we've lost Kismayo, we've lost Baidoa and other areas of Somalia, but we aren't a spent force. We are still a force to be reckoned with. And then thirdly, they wanted it to be a morale booster for their foot soldiers. As Salom has said, there are splinter groups all around. There are some who think that the struggle should be kept domestic so that they would want to assert themselves without thinking of spreading their tentacles elsewhere. The other foreign elements, like the American Abu Mansur al-Amriki and others who have come from other theaters of
Where do we
jihad.
put the religious bit?
Well, religion, they say, is
very difficult.
Frankly.
You see, I think that the religious bit is just a ruse.
I mean, if you listen to some of
no,
the survivors
look at the dynamics. No, look at the dynamics.
The fact that they segregated Muslims from non-Muslims.
This was just to create more tension.
Yeah, it's to create more tension.
No, and also no, they wanted to have sympathy from the Muslim world.
Yes.
Certainly, the Quran is against the killing of innocent people.
Exactly.
So by saying that they separated the Muslims from Christians,
it legitimizes
even when
so
Saddam
it makes it right to kill the other non-Muslims?
it's wrong. But they want to have a sense of belonging.
Yes.
A
At
sense
least
of
a
belonging
group that
with the
will
Muslim
sympathize
world.
with them, that they spared our people.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
But
that,
certainly,
I mean, to say that
mainstream Muslims are against what
to
happened.
legitimize maybe the action in the eyes of the Muslim world, that okay, we spared the Muslims or those who were able to say certain aspects of the Quran.
And that is why I commend Christians wherever they are, both on the continent and elsewhere. On a normal day, someone would think this was a Muslim-Christian struggle. So Christians would also have their own backlash and reaction to that. But we've been very measured in our reaction, and I think it's quite commendable.
Yeah, I mean,
the enemy knows no religion, he knows no morality, and he's so brutal. He's not a Muslim. We don't consider him a mainstream Muslim, and he should be targeted squarely by all people, including Muslims and Christians.
Yes, considering the whole threat of terrorism, I mean, if you look at the African context, most of it, I think, has a bedrock from, let's say, economic deprivation. Because if you come closer to home, the Boko Haram scenario that we have, for example, it's for me, it looks more like a struggle for relevance more than anything else. Because when you look at even that scenario, you're talking about people attacking their own fellow Muslims most of the time, and then trying to use the whole church bombing and everything just to gain some sort of leverage so that they can be able to negotiate certain things or certain perks that they think they deem important for them. You see, the problem about that is that you would always get gullible people, especially young, impressionable people who want to also achieve something in life or to have to be seen amongst their peers as to have done something heroic. And it is that mindset that they are tapping into to deploy and execute some of these nefarious activities. So you see, when people do not have a livelihood that they can maintain and see a future, bright future, some of these things then.
But Salom, I mean, looking at where most of these attacks, Salom, looking at where most of these attacks are coming from. I mean, these are countries that we call them the oil giants. I mean, they have a rich economy moving in. So why should economic be a challenge there?
What is happening is that even though in these rich countries, they still get people who are well-to-do, who are better off. They still get them to carry bombs and go.
That's why
so it is more than economic.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I believe that the religious indoctrination should be looked at. There must be education. Religious leaders in various countries should come out and give a proper interpretation of their scriptures so that they don't convince innocent young men.
Yeah,
but some of these, the religious bit you also mentioned, some even quotes the Quran to support
let me chip this in. I think the approach should be multi-pronged, and just as it's been mentioned, look, the 19 young men who carried out the heinous attacks of 9/11, 15 of them came from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the richest country in the Middle East. 2 came from the United Arab Emirates. One came from the United Arab Emirates. 2 came from Lebanon. And the ringleader, Mohammed Atta, came from Egypt. So I agree entirely with Salom that there are certain economic undercurrents that precipitate such attacks. But that notwithstanding, religious zealotry is fundamental. Because why would I strap a bomb across my body or booby trap a car and go hit the headquarters of the UN in Abuja, knowing so well that I'm going to die with my victims? It's because these people are told that, based upon their misplaced interpretations of certain verses of the Quran, that when you die fighting in such a way, you are guaranteed salvation. That is why the onus lies upon our clerics to come out with a counter-narrative, a narrative that runs counter to this wrong impression.
Yes, I mean, I think it's what they call creating an avatar. The avatar has been created that when you go and when you're a mujahideen, is that, I hope that's the
one is mujahid. Mujahideen is a plural.
Okay, so when you're mujahid and then you carry out something in the name of the jihad or under the auspices of a jihad, you are actually guaranteed that salvation. So I think also that, like I was building the point up, that it's not only the economic sense, but also maybe a sense of dissatisfaction among a certain segment of the youth. And those then, that is then even fed into their mind that you can gain relevance or self-importance or a certain level of aspiration if you are allowed, or if you allow yourself to be channeled to be used for some of these purposes. Because the main orchestrators of these things still sit behind and run these guys like puppets.
Exactly.
So the main thing is that I think that it's a multi-pronged effort, because you have to look at also the aspirations of the youth in all these trouble spots and how we can channel their energies from something destructive into something constructive. However, it also borders on the interplay of geopolitics, because you have to talk about the fact that most people have felt slighted by activities of the West. And when the activities of the West and the East clash, in the intersection or in what happens, you have some of these people who have been victims in some form or the other, maybe because their tribe was displaced because of some Western intervention somewhere.
I think, Western foreign policy in the Middle East also fits into the current conflict.
Let's now settle home. I mean, Ghana. God forbid, though, but are we prepared for something like this? Have we trained our security men enough? Do we have enough security at most of these advantage places?
Thank God.
And are we security conscious?
Thank God, Ghana is seen as a bastion of peace in the West African sub-region, and we have a diligent police force and a robust army on standby to protect the nation. But we can't take chances. But when I look at what is happening, I'm a youth. I'm a young man, and people in their 20s and early 30s like me are those who are used for such attacks. I don't pick any signals that the Boko Haram phenomenon has made any inroads in the Ghanaian Muslim community. So that's why the onus lies upon us now to preempt any such thing from happening. And the effort should be multifaceted.
Maybe we've not seen that because of our government's silence on that issue, because they don't want to interfere in such issue in Nigeria.
I think
George, I think I've said it so many times. Look, I've studied the militants. Look, I have listened to their leaders in their own languages. I've listened to Abu Nasr al-Wahaishi, their leader Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, their leader Drutkel, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, their main leader Al-Qaeda core, ensconced between Afghanistan and Pakistan, Ayman al-Zawahiri. The main reason they target other sovereign states is when you militarily contribute to any campaign in their country. That is why I think the Ghanaian government should be circumspect in dealing with the Boko Haram issue. You know,
exactly.
By 2009, Boko Haram was killing people only in their dozens. But 4 years down the line, there has been an escalation of the conflict. There has been a declaration of state of emergency by Goodluck Jonathan in the three northern states of Yobe, Borno, and Adamawa. And now Boko Haram kills people in their hundreds. So come what may, at a certain point in time, there will be a call for a regional bloc like ECOWAS to contribute troops to quell the violence and dissidence in northern Nigeria. That is why I think we should be circumspect because of similarities between here and then there. Yeah. There are many people. Look, I was on a program yesterday, and when the phone lines were opened, a guy called, and then he said he was from Maiduguri, the capital of Borno, and the guy is living here. Yeah. So these people would only have to press some buttons in case they feel like we are also fighting them. So that's why I think we should be very careful. I'm not entirely against having boots on the ground in case we need to contribute troops, but we should be very careful.
Yeah,
very careful.
I mean,
it's
it's very important. The security aspect is very important. You wouldn't believe it, but in East Africa, I mean, like I said, I was in Kenya and Kampala just 2 weeks ago. When you are entering a mall, you actually you use a metal detector to search you. And when you are using a car and you are entering, they have those mirrors that check for bombs or hidden incendiary equipment under your car. But even with that, just that little marginal step in security, look at what happened. I think that we should begin to take security more seriously in this country, because any country that begins to have a certain level of regional or economic relevance will definitely have upstarts coming in. Not sometimes, I mean, a strike will happen here not because Ghana has gone to militarily intervene, but just because somebody wants to make a statement. And how do we put ourselves in a situation where we can react very swiftly to that? Like, I mean, I have a lot of hope that our security services will be able to stem or quell any efforts in that direction. But then I think that we should also be much more proactive in our security in a lot of public places. Exactly. Last week, for instance, I was just over the weekend, there was this Barney show at Accra Conference Center. And the way even the place was organized for people to enter, it could have caused a stampede. I think that we have not taken issues of security very well, especially when we talk about public gatherings and general gatherings. Exactly. And I think that we must begin to covertly start looking at all these things very critically, because it will take somebody 2 weeks of planning and 1 day of flawless execution to wreak
that mayhem,
irreparable harm, what you call carnage on this.
Abakar, your thoughts on this?
Yes, we should also use national agencies to educate the people on the need to maintain peace. The NCCE, if they pick up that mandate, organize seminars, invite clerics and from all religions. This will also facilitate the understanding of the relationship between various religions. But security-wise, one can be sure that we are wholly secure.